trees in the backwoods night. Red lights cutting through the pine in flight. Bigfoot stomping with his youngling beard. Whispers of tales that ain't too clear. UFOs buzzing solo through the haze. Howling banshees set the forest ablaze. Jersey devil howls, drink rays to the sky. Drunken cryptids party until the morning's night. Yeah. It's showtime, running wild in the moonlight. Stars burn down, watch the freaks all take flight.
To good times.
Raise your glasses to the mysteries divine. It's showtime, let the cryptids realign.
Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Drunkencryptids. I'm Matthew Orton, your favorite host, and I do got to give a shout out to blademedia.com. Thanks for the logo and the website, Dylan. I appreciate everything you've done. That's blademedia.com. And a special shout out to everybody else behind the scenes, everybody, Tommy, Chris, Jacob, everybody, appreciate it all. But tonight, I have somebody that I've looked up to in the podcast, in the cryptid, and the paranormal community since I first started listening to podcasts, before I even launched my own show. I heard him first on Tony Merkel show, The Confessionals. And following his careers, he started working with Juan, then he started his own show. He's a musician, he's a researcher, he's a filmmaker now. He has his own podcast. I mean, how many more lists do we need? I mean, I could keep adding on. Have you wrote a book yet?
Well, I'm in the process of putting some things together towards a book or a book series. I've actually got I call it a secretive project that I've been working on. It's going to be a fictionalized universe that I'm working on right now. So I've been talking to some people behind the scenes about what I want to do. I've already written a first season script for that. It'll probably start out as an audio drama and then span off into graphic novels and some other things too. That's the goal, the long-term goal, but I haven't really told people too much about it, but it's also working too. So I'm constantly doing something, making something, creating something. So I just try to stay busy.
Well, you are. I mean, you are probably one, besides Justin and Jay, because I think you're probably busier than most people I know. Between your show, Tony's show, and the filming, and of course you're a dad. You're a husband and a father as well. So you got to get time in there for the family. But without further ado, you guys, real quick. So this is Joel Thomas, host of Free the Rabbits. If you've ever been to my house, you've ever hung out in the tavern, you've probably heard his theme song, Free the Rabbits, come on the show. I'm a big fan. I'm not a hip hop guy. I'm more of a hard rocker guy. But the song Free the Rabbits spoke to me. He does all that intro. Well, he does the outro music for Tony's show. Like I said, man, you're like everywhere. And I absolutely love it. So real quick, I'll let you tell everybody where to find you if they're not listening to you already. I don't know what rock they're living under and what planet they're from or which dimension they're from.
Well, you can find me pretty much anywhere as far as the podcast goes. So you can find me on YouTube, Rumble. Just look for Free the Rabbits. You can find me on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Podbean, any place that you stream podcasts, you can find me. So it's, again, pretty easy. Just type in Free the Rabbits. It's a pretty unique name. So I don't really have any people that I'm contending with, like a Free the Rabbits popping their head out the hole or something like that.
Well, I love your slogan too, though. Get out, touch grass. And I have a good friend of mine. Her and her kids come over all the time and hang out. She's still friends with my ex-wife, which is fine. But she came over one day. She goes, I just went outside one day and just spent 20 minutes barefoot in the grass. I was like, got to get out and touch grass. Speaking of which, have you listened to Free the Rabbits? So I promote your show almost more than I promote mine, to be honest with you, And all the way back, Jacob was like, so who's Joel? And I said, all right, let me take you on a journey real quick. So I went through, so all the way back from Ohio to Arkansas, we played Free the Rabbits.
Nice.
He got a kick out of it. He goes, yeah, I recognize this song now. I'm like, yeah, dude, we played at the tavern all the time.
Yeah.
It comes on. and like Dogman Blues from Senior Pinch and everything. But yeah, man. So we do jam out to your music. We are fans of you down here. Want you to know that. So you got friends and fans in Arkansas, and it's an honor to have you on the show. I was very. I was like fist bumping and everything in the truck when you messaged back that you're be willing to come on. So yeah, like I said, I had a fangirl out Friday night for a minute. I was like, oh hey, this is cool. But again, it's so cool to be in this community, to meet people. And your journey is very unique. And what I find funny about it is you have such a unique journey. You went in a different direction than I went in on trying to get to some spiritual grounding, I guess is a good way of saying it. You went over to the Mason side. I went to the military side. And I had some crazy, well, of course, I was raised Mormon as well. And we talked a little bit about that off air. So my whole journey getting grounded spiritually is crazy. And hearing you talk about yours through your show, because you're not afraid to admit it. And I love that about you. You and Tony both. You're not blunt in your face. You're like, here, this is the facts. This is what I found. This is what the research says. You make your own mind up and go from there. What really inspired me, though, and got my attention was the Nephilim. I'd never heard anybody before really dig in and jump into the Nephilim the way you have, and which led me to Gary Wayne. And when I had Gary Wayne on the show, which was a huge honor as well, it sparked every interest that I had back up, but it's kicked everything back into gear again. What I had, that I was doing in my early 20s. I was like, here's all the answers I was looking for. And I started doing my own biblical studies, my own biblical, I always suggest to everybody, to do this, because I come at everything I do on the paranormal side, the cryptid side, from a Christian perspective. And a lot of that comes out of the Old Testament. So, and that's all thanks to you. So, I mean, yeah, it's, how did you dig all that stuff up? That's the cool part. How were you able to go down these rabbit holes? And I mean, just like I'll start Googling and trying to research, and I get dead ends. I did a great dive on Dogman, and then I heard yours about Dogman. I was like, you found more than I did. This, So again, people are like, oh, I love your episode on Dogman. I was like, hold on, okay, let's hear me, and then jump over and go find Joel, and he does a deeper dive and a lot better dive, and it correlates with a lot that I said, but he goes deeper into what I was already talking about. Kudos to you, man. I mean, that's awesome.
Yeah, as far as research goes, I don't know. I just kind of got a knack for it. I know where to look at a lot of old books. And typically, once you reach a certain point on books, when you get about 100 years, 150 years, something like that, you can typically find them all for free online for, PDF files or whatever. And I just know there are certain places I know where to look. Have a degree in internet specialists and web design. So one of the things that I learned through that was keywords, and I'm really good at understanding how keywords work and how to find things through search engines. And as I'm doing that, I'll find books as I'm digging. So a lot of times what happens is when I'm looking at a paragraph or a section out of, say, an article or a dissertation on something, right? Because I'll go to places where there'll be papers written about certain topics. I go deep because I want to know where the source matter is, where they got it from. So generally I'm going to, back things up with source material. So I want to know what that is. Specifically, say, this is just a good example. So say you went to Wikipedia looking for something, right? Not the best source, but it's a good place to start. I tell people if you want to start somewhere, but say you start there and then it gives you source material. Well, now I want to go find that book. I want to go find that document. And then I want to start scouring the document, because generally what happens is I find way more when I do that, and I'll be able to track certain things back. And then as I'm doing that, they may also source something else. And then I'm saying, oh, whoa, here's this other book here. And I try to buy hard copies of most books if I can. But if it's something old that I'm not going to be able to get a hold of, like a first edition, or say they stopped making publication on a book 100 years ago, even 50 years ago, then you're going to try to find it online. I mean, that's probably your best shot. And a lot of these books, they will have been made into EPUB or PDF files. So if I can find those, then I'll be able to really dig through, especially when it comes to a lot of these ancient alchemists and occultists and Gnostics, and even Christian writers from a long time ago. You can find a wealth of knowledge out there if you just know where to look. So that's typically my process. And I honestly that's about the best way I can explain it, because my brain just works in a weird way that even if I tried to explain it to somebody, it probably wouldn't come out right. So my brain it just works in like it's like a puzzle. I'm building a puzzle whenever I'm putting a topic together or notes together or whatever.
Well, it works. I'll tell you that. Well, I mean, whatever your brain is doing is work. I wouldn't say it's a weird way of working, but it's great, because there'll be times I'm at work and you'll be talking. I have some go, whoa, 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 whoa. Let me back up. And I've played quite a few episodes over again just to make sure I got the right information down. Your big one for me that was a really big eye opener was the one on Judas. And it was a great perspective. It was something I never looked into until I listened to your episode. And because of that, I've actually gotten into debates. But again, too, because the information, where you said you were getting it from, I was able to come back with, intelligent counter arguments to people about Judas being, saved and everything. And it made absolute sense. And that was the first one I made Jacob listen to on the way back from Ohio. So that was, great. And just the way, again, your approach and all that good stuff is amazing. So, it's something you should, be proud of yourself about, because you're doing great and you're doing good service out there, period. But I see the shape of shadows behind you. So how many films have you guys done?
So we've done a lot more than are out. So we've got several that are being worked on right now, being edited. And I know some of them are moving into what we're going to call miniseries. So instead of buying an entire film, you'll be buying a miniseries. So say you went to Netflix or Hulu or whatever, and there was a documentary miniseries, 4 to 6 episodes. We're going to be doing a lot of those going forward. So right now we got a miniseries that's coming out probably Q1 next year, early Q2. And that's built on the back of a ton of research I did on Aleister Crowley. And we went to 4 locations, and we did get the best footage of anything we've ever caught that's weird on camera ever. So, and you can confirm with Justin on that. He's seen it. So he knows. And he can tell you verbatim that it's nothing that he knows could be anything of a biological makeup. So we've gone through the rigors on that. But yeah, it's going to be great. We just dropped a new film called The Meadow Project, where we signed these NDAs. We went out to this place called The Meadow, where this group called ASOG has been going out there for the better part of 10, 15 years and been documenting everything that's happened to them out there. A lot of weird stuff. So we went out there and we spent about a week out there, and a lot of weird stuff happened while we're out there. So that film's currently out right now at merkelfilms.com, plus about 2 hours of bonus footage comes with that. So you can get that, watch the bonus footage. We have a really nice segment in the bonus footage with the Corin helmet, the God helmet. One of the guys on their team used a God helmet, and then the footage was then sent to a guy in France who does quantum imaging, and the stuff he pulled out in the quantum realm on those pictures was absolutely mind-blowing. So you get to see all that, even in the bonus footage. So I encourage people to go get that right now. All of our other films are up on merkelfilms.com. You brought up Shape of Shadows, and we can even get into Shape of Shadows, some of the crazy stuff that happened there. That was a pretty wild trip. So where we went in Utah, went to the Uinta Basin, and we went to Skinwalker Ranch. Sort of. So there is a ranch that butts up next to Skinwalker Ranch called Space Wolf Research. Now, Space Wolf Research is owned by a guy named Ryan Burns, and he's been on Tony's show before. He's done the rounds. He's got a lot of interesting stories himself. Well, I'm going to backtrack it before he even buys it. So the previous owner owned it. And again, this is butting up right next to Skinwalker Ranch. So all the weird stuff that's happening at Skinwalker Ranch is also happening there because it's right there. And there are many obviously Native Americans in the area. There's the Native American tribe, the Utes, that are right there too. And we met a ton of different Native American people while we were there, which was very important because the one thing about our film that's a little different than anything that Skinwalker Ranch has put out or any of these other documentaries about the area is we didn't really approach it from a scientific angle, more of a spiritual angle. And we were able to talk to the Ute tribe specifically, but several other people of different tribes, and they broke down to us their experiences. And they were very grateful for us to do that because they said, yeah, you get these guys come in here and all they want to talk about is science, and they kind of look at us as a joke. And we were like, well, honestly, your angle probably jives more with what's really going on than what the scientific angle is. So that's kind of how that started. So you got the original owner. He's got this weird stuff happening. So one night he hears something and he walks outside and he looks, and these 3 dogmen come running and jump over the fence from Skinwalker Ranch into his property. So he pulls out his shotgun, starts letting off rounds, and they go through the dogmen. So they just keep coming. So he runs in the trailer that he's in, shuts the door, and sells the ranch the next morning. So he puts it up and says, there's no way. He said, I've seen some weird stuff. He's like, but the dogmen thing's too much for me. These werewolves too much. So Ryan ends up buying it because he's into this kind of stuff. And he has a Native American that actually is one of the caretakers of the property, does security there. They've got a guy that's on property that watches it too. So we had been in talks with Ryan Burns to go out there, and it all worked out to where we were able to go out to the Uinta Basin for an entire week. So we get out there, and on the way there, and all this stuff's in the film. So if anybody's curious and they want to go see this footage that I'm talking about now, all the stuff's in the film. And you can go to merkelfilms.com to get Shape of Shadows. So on the way there, we get a call from Christian and Joseph, who were there before us, and they said, we caught a UFO in the middle of the day. We had some binoculars that were looking out across Skinwalker Ranch, and they were filming through the binoculars. Well, this object just raises up out of the tree line and just shoots across, and you can see it. You don't know what it is. It's fairly large from the distance that we were looking at. So they caught that. So we're pretty excited already. So we get there, they show us, and yeah, it's pretty wild. You'll see it on the film. So we get out there, we meet John, and he is part Ute. He's part another Native American tribe, and then he is part Caucasian, and he's traveled the world. He's been all over the place, and he knows just about everything, especially in that specific area. So he knows where all the strange cryptids are at, all the crazy paranormal activity. He goes into a lot of skinwalker iconography that's going on in the area. He's also what the skinwalkers specifically do when it comes to Native American tribes. And we had a couple other Native Americans that we met as well. So again, that was kind of our focal point. We didn't really want to go too heavy on the science part of it because that's been done a million times over. However, we did have a local professor come out from one of the universities, and he actually does Geiger ratings on the property. So he came out there and was checking the levels, and they were just spiking all over the place. It was pretty insane. And he also does, in his free time, a lot of research on giants. So he's big into giants too. He told us actually a place about an hour and a half away where they had all of these petroglyphs of 6-fingered giants all over these giant walls, which is also in the film. We actually went out there and checked it out. So also about a week before we decide to leave to go there, there is a giant trailer that would go on the back of a big semi truck, and it's on the property, and they keep all kind of different items in there for storage. Well, one day the caretaker on the property gets up and goes out there, and this thing has been moved. So this thing is massive. We're talking a couple tons, right? At least. And it was literally picked up and shifted like this, but there's no drag marks on the ground. So that meant that it was actually picked up off of the ground and moved. And the only way to pull something like that off would have been get a helicopter and drop cables down and pick it up and then move it, which nobody heard any helicopters or anything. So when they did the Geiger ratings over that area, they were just spiking all over. It was insane. So the energy levels were nuts already on the property, but in that particular area, it was pretty crazy too. So that's just kind of before we even got there. So we get there and we start doing some interviews. And the first night, it's starting to get kind of dusk, and we're kind of looking across over into Skinwalker Ranch, which was kind of cool because we could walk all the way up to the fence line there. But at night, you could have binoculars and look over there. And there's a lot of weird stuff, a lot of weird activity going over there. Lights going, weird vehicles going in and out. I mean, this was pretty wild stuff. So it's dusk. Tony and Ward leave the campsite because they're going to look around. We're kind of up on the mesa looking across into some other mesas and just kind of looking around. Well, they come walking up and they look pretty disturbed. And they said, listen, we found something that's pretty disturbing over here. And it was a ritual circle that they found. And it was made of bones of animal heads. And there were offerings in the middle of it. And so this was done by a pretty massive tree that they walked up on. Well, almost immediately after they're showing us the pictures they took of it, I would say anywhere from 20 to 30 UFOs lit up the sky. And they stayed in the sky for about an hour, hour and a half. And we've got that footage as well on the documentary. And I was looking across the mesa and I was watching different colored UFOs going up, across, all kind of weird diagonal patterns. I mean, it was pretty wild to see that many light up the sky at one time. Now, we were able to spot out what we knew were satellites prior to that. So we weren't confused in thinking that these were satellites or these were stars, because they were obviously moving in a manner that really was incapable of anything that could fly. And we knew there were some planes that would come overhead because there was a airport not too far away. So we would see from time to time some airplanes, but for the most part, not a lot. But to see what we knew to be unidentified flying objects moving in patterns that just weren't normal for anything to move in for that length of time was pretty incredible. And it was weird to see that right after they had ran up on this ritual circle. So that was just the first night we were there when we got there. So it gets crazier, and I'll go into more of it, but I'll kick it to you if you got any questions.
Well, real quick, what gets me is the ritual circle with the animal heads in there, right? So to me, what stood out on that one was nothing. None of the bones had been gnawed on. The skulls hadn't been gnawed on by any squirrels or anything. Because I mean, we both know out in nature they're going to gnaw on the bones. They're going to need the calcium. Same thing from the antlers. When they drop them. So to me, that's really odd that it hadn't been tested. I'm wondering how old it was. I mean, or how fresh. Or recent, I guess I should say. Did you guys have any idea how recent that was?
No, not really. That we couldn't tell. We didn't. So that night after the UFOs stopped lighting up the sky, we went back down there. The entire crew did, to go look at it. And I was able to take a pretty close look at it at that point. And then obviously during the daytime the next day, we went back again to really take a look at it. And it remained there the entire time we were there too. So we would periodically go check it out, see if anything had changed, if anybody had been there. So it was super strange. It looked like, though, that someone had taken the bones and prepared them for this ritual. So clearly it was done by a human because of the offerings that were put in the middle. There were coins, and it looked like some maize was also added in too, and just a few different things that were in the circle with it. So that was really odd that we saw that. But the weirdest thing was the next day. So we go out there to look at this ritual circle again. And as we're walking back, we notice there's a dip to the side that goes behind some bushes, behind some trees, and then there's another dip up, and then it just goes right out into Skinwalker Ranch, where there's a giant oil rig out there, because there's a lot of oil rigs in the area that we were too. According to Native Americans, and I tend to agree, when you're doing stuff like that on sacred land, you're probably stirring stuff up that you probably shouldn't be. So there was a lot of that going on too.
Similar to the coal mining in Appalachia.
Exact same reaction, right? So Ward happened to see these footsteps that were going off this dip. And he said, "Hey man, come take a look at these." I was like, okay. So I walk up and they look like boot prints or some sort of footprint. But as we track them, they start changing. And they're not the same boot prints anymore. They look smaller, they look kind of deformed. And as they get to the end, all we see are hoof prints and dog prints in the area where should be human prints. So that was super confusing, because the hoof prints and the dog prints were not at the top where the boot prints started. So there was nothing there. And it had been raining prior, and it was clearly muddy when these happened. So if those dog prints and those hoof prints were an animal that had walked down there, we would have seen some of those too. But there was nothing. It was just human prints. They were pretty large footprint size. We actually got some cast of some of the prints out there as well. So we don't want to speculate too much, but when you're out in Skinwalker land, I mean, you see footprints changing, you start thinking things, but you don't want to go too far, and you really want to get some people to take a look at it that have had interactions with or understand the Skinwalker phenomena. So we had John come out first, and we kept people separate because we didn't want what they said to influence the other person next to them or anything like that. And we didn't want to tell them what we thought it was either. We just wanted to bring them up and say, "What do you think about this?" So we brought John up first, and John said within about 20 seconds, he's like, "Oh, this is Skinwalker prints." He's like, "You'll see these all the time." He said, "Yeah, this is a human changing into something that's non-human, some sort of animal type creature." He's like, "You see the dog prints here, you see these hoof prints here." He said, "And you can see where they trail off, where they should go run off." He said, "This is a perfect spot for something to change, because you've got these bushes for cover and these trees for cover right here." He said, "This is where it would happen." He's like, "And then on top of that, you're only 20 feet away from the ritual circle." He's like, "So you probably had something happen at the ritual circle that was the catalyst to start it, and then they came over here and changed." So we also had another Native American come out later on in the day without John, and within about 20, 30 seconds, immediately, those are Skinwalker prints. I've seen those before. Matter of fact, the guy's great-grandfather used to be a Skinwalker and used to change. So he heard the stories passed down from his family line. So they were very familiar with the phenomena around there of Skinwalkers. Matter of fact, they told us a lot of stories that didn't make the film about different people in the area that were Skinwalkers or suspected Skinwalkers. So that was pretty wild the first 2 days we were there to get, Skinwalker prints or alleged Skinwalker prints. We did, again, cast those. We have casts of those. And just to have UFOs in the sky the first night that we're there, and then have a UFO in the middle of the day before we get there, was also pretty wild, just within a matter of 48 hours.
Isn't that pretty cool, though, how quick it can happen in the investigation area?
Oh, yeah.
And then isn't that how bad it is to where it takes like days for something to finally happen?
Right.
Yeah. So I love you're saying alleged, but so what's your gut instinct?
Well, I don't know, right? So unless I see something for sure, I don't know. I mean, I can only go on what the Native American gentleman there said about the footprints. It's strange for there not to be any animal prints in the dip down, and then to just appear in an area and then run off, and then there to be human prints, but then those human prints don't even look the same. It's like they're getting smaller and they're changing. it looks weird. So I'm not going to give any kind of definitive answer on that, but I can tell you what they said that was within a matter of 20, 30 seconds. They were, well, this is skinwalker prints. That's what these are. So that was really strange. John also took us out to a couple other areas away from the ranch, and he told us some other stories. He's like this one place where this fawn-like creature, it was a two-legged fawn-like human hybrid, would harass people, had been harassing people there for a long time. So that was pretty wild. And they have these things called water babies. And it's pretty wild. These babies come floating to the top of this river and sing and try to lure people over to them. And he told a story about one of his family members. So his grandfather, when he was a child, was out playing around in the sand over there and dug up one, and it popped up at him and has these jagged teeth and was chasing him, and said his grandmother kicked the baby into the water and it was screaming and took off. He said, so yeah, they're really weird. He said there's a lot of activity of just so many different things going on in the area. They talk about giants. They would just point to the mountains and say, yeah, they're over there. You know, people have seen them plenty of times. It's still going on today. It's not something that is not talked about. Native American tribes talk about giants all the time. I mean, that's something that they're very open about, that they're not shy about saying did exist and still do exist, albeit in a more minimalized format than it used to be. But that was some pretty interesting stories. And then one of the more odd things that happened, you know, we'd been doing interviews there for a few days. John had taken us around to all these other areas, was showing us where these other cryptids were at. He showed us where all these wild horses ran to, where all these cryptids were at, which was pretty cool too. So as we're going back, it's dusk and we're driving, and I noticed this vehicle to my right. Now we're in the middle of the desert. And when I say in the middle of the desert, there's nothing on our way to this ranch. I mean, a couple roads that go off and basically nothing.
The Plains Desert out there. Yep.
Right. So there's a dirt road that was a little bit in front of a railroad track. We're about to cross over the railroad track. And I noticed this car with the dimmers on. I was like, that's kind of odd. Middle of nowhere. But you know, whatever. So we drive past it. Well, the lights come on and they pull out behind us. So I'm typically the most paranoid person in the crew. So I'm always looking around. So I didn't say anything to anybody to start with, because, you know, if it's nothing, they pull off or something, it was nothing. Well, I noticed they're following closer, and we've gone through quite a few turns and deviations, and they're still with us. Matter of fact, they're making sure that they're still with us. So we're about to pull into Space Wolf Research, and I just say, listen, guys, let's stop real quick because I think we're getting followed. And Tony said, what? I was like, man, just stop. So we stopped right when we pulled into the ranch, and we got out, and this vehicle slow rolls right by the entrance. We're talking really slow and almost to a stop watching us. So Tony, being Tony, is like, you know, we've got guns. Let's just chase them down. Well, we hop back in the truck and we start chasing these guys on a high-speed chase. While we're on a high-speed chase, another vehicle pulls out behind us and starts following us. So now the guy's boxed in. So we're whipping around all these turns, trying to chase this one car while we got another car following us. While that's going on, another vehicle pulls into the ranch and tries to roll up on the campsite, not knowing that we still had people there. So Joseph comes rolling out back there at the camp, and they see him and they spin out, roll out. We rush to get back. So we start doing a full perimeter search of everything, making sure nobody had, you know, ducked off somewhere. But we figured out that the original vehicle was there to lure us back out because they had another vehicle that they wanted to slide in there. And we think because we had been asking a lot of questions, interviewing a lot of people, that somebody was interested in what we were doing there. And if it was government, which I'm not even going to go that far, but just say it was, and we know they work with Skinwalker Ranch, that's just a known fact. That's not even anything that we have to guess on. I mean, they talk about it on the show. Then, yeah, us showing up and then 25 UFOs hitting the sky would probably be a little bit of a signal, like a bat signal off in the air. Then there's the other possibility that there was just tribes people that weren't happy that we were asking a lot of people questions too. So it could have just been they were just trying to run us off and said, get off the reservation, get out of here. You're asking too many questions. So it could have been as simple as that. So it might not have been as far as some sort of government operation, but there was definitely somebody trying to mess with us and definitely tried to get to the campsite. So that was kind of towards the tail end of the trip after a lot of real craziness happened on that trip. That was a wild one. Utah was a really wild time. And we did end up going to the spot with all the petroglyphs, and it was pretty interesting seeing all of these giants and what looked like reptilians and aliens all up on this giant rock wall everywhere. And these giants all had 6 fingers, which was really crazy too. So,
growing up in that area as a kid, you talked about it earlier with all the legends, stories. Yeah. Growing up with it, that's all we heard about. Like, I grew up knowing about Bigfoot. There was never a question of it not existing. There would always be people that come back from, going skiing or doing anything with talking about, yeah, we saw something. We saw something. My mom even up there, and my stepdad had knee surgery, and they went up there in the winter, snowing, and he had to, work his leg, do physical therapy. So he said, go ahead, go up the hill. I'll walk up the hill, meet you on top. And she took the snowmobile up on top of the hill. I was sitting there waiting for him, and she happened to look on the other side of the hill, down in this little valley, little clearing, were some other snowmobilers. And so she said she was just looking around. It was snowing. She looked over to the left, and there was a giant figure just standing there at the tree looking at her. And she said, I got scared, turned around, yelled, my stepdad's name 3 times, turned back, and was gone. It was that night she had told him when she had saw, and he got pissed because he goes, "What? We could have found tracks." So, and it was up in the Lynches at the basin of a Hellhole Lake that I found my first hand track at in 1992. At the time, we actually thought it was the ball of the foot, when you sprint,
right?
You sprint on the balls of your feet. But yeah, and we were taught as a kid when we go up there, to respect everything. Whatever you take in, you take out. We had a cabin. So, we really, really was taught so well on how to treat the environment, the land, and how well to respect the wildlife there. And of course, was also taught how to look out for the other wildlife. There are times looking back as a kid, there could have been tree knocks, there could have been something, and we thought it was something completely different. And there were times too, it'd get real quiet. But as kids, you're not really paying attention to it. But we'd always go back. But Hellhole Lake is a really good hot spot, and that's about 30 miles from Skinwalker Ranch to the crow flies, which is crazy, So it's a lot of fun, and I absolutely just loved it. But I do think, honestly, for the vehicles following you and stuff, it may have been the locals, honestly, either messing with you guys or actually trying to scare you guys off. The government's going to be a little bit sneakier than that. That's kind of obvious, Yeah,
and that's what we lend to as well. However, we won't throw the other out as a possibility because we were there right next to Skinwalker Ranch. So that was the only other slight possibility that it could have been something government related, but we really lended more to the locals doing something. And even after talking to John too, he thought that it was probably more of the locals messing with us and that they just didn't like us there because we had been interviewing so many Native Americans. And I think that was a little bit different than what they were used to, because most of the time with these operations, they don't really deal with Native Americans too much because they're more worried about whatever experiments they're doing on the property, which we saw a lot of at night. So there was a lot of weird light shows coming out of Skinwalker Ranch that didn't make a lot of sense. So for sure, there was some things going on there that we had no idea what it was. So yeah, that trip was pretty wild. You brought up Bigfoot, and it does make me think of one of the other films we did called Sasquatch and the Missing Man, and we did that one with Wes Germer from Sasquatch Chronicles. And that's where we went specifically looking for Bigfoot. And we went out to the spot that Wes Germer and his brother had the bluff charge with the Bigfoot and the female, what they thought was a female, and then a child Bigfoot that was in a tree. And this thing squared off with him for about an hour, hour and a half, and then dropped down to what they call a spider crawl on all fours, and then crept off into the woods. So we actually went out to that area and we did night investigations out there. Our last night was when things really got crazy. So we went back out there. It was raining off and on, and we were in a mobile camper. So we were able to stay inside, but get out at the same time because we were sleeping in the camper. So we park there, and we're just in there talking, trying to set up a game plan. And that's when we heard something whistling outside to us. So we knew something was out there. Weren't sure what it was. Open the door, and man, you talk about the most putrid smell you've ever smelled. I mean, just rotten eggs, just awful. And then it was raining too, so it was worse. So it was just some of the, like a wet dog, but worse. And we've had this happen before, and this would be typically before something crazy happens, right? So, and that's something you'll hear with people who have Bigfoot experiences. They smell it first before they even see it. So we started using IR and looking around into the woods, and we did see some eye shine that seemed to pop out behind some trees, but we couldn't really catch anything that was definitive. But we could hear some thumping around going on. So that's when it was, let's strap Joel up and send him out there by himself time in the middle of the night in the rain with things thumping around in the woods. So I get out and I actually walk by myself all the way up to where Wes had his experience. So I was up there around that area. And as I'm walking up there and I'm believing the eyesight of everyone at the camp, I can hear something thumping parallel to me all the way up. And again, this is the first time that's happened. There's been some other areas this had happened to me before in the nighttime or evening time. So I get up there and then I come back. Well, at that time, they caught some sort of orb came out of the woods on them, camera. And it's a very interesting exercise in what is the orb actually. And Justin was able to really go through that in the film and talk about what it was. It ended up, when we looked at it and slowed it down, it had moth-like qualities. And I say moth-like qualities because for that time of year, there shouldn't be any moths anywhere. So that was one of the things that Justin said. And there's a very occult connection with moths and fae folk and fairies, and even throughout different religions and cultures. So that was the one big part that we took away from that incident. But when that happened is when things really just got crazy. So we could hear things thumping around together. It was almost in unison. So we knew there was multiple things in the woods. Everybody had went back into the vehicle. And this is something that's not on the film because you just can't put it in the film because it happened away from cameras, and you could, I guess, talk about it on camera, but it wouldn't make much sense to do. But Tony and I were outside and we heard something growl. And I've said this to people plenty of times that I didn't hear it. I felt it. It was like infrasound, shook my whole body. And Tony looked at me and said, "What is that?" I said, "Man, that's it. That's what that is, because whatever it is, it's close. And it's letting us know they don't really like us here." So went back into the camper, and around that time, and we've been seeing this all week, there was a vehicle there that never left.
Yeah, that's what I was wanting you to talk about that as well right there, because that through the whole story with everything, believe it or not, that was the one that just jumped out at me like there's something odd.
Right. So the first time we saw it was the first day we went up there during the daytime with Wes. We saw it over there. We didn't think much about it. And Wes said, it's not unusual for guys to have work vans or work trucks and park up there in the national forest because there's plenty of places you can park too. But they sometimes would just duck off places and camp, especially if they were just doing trade work or they were in town for a bit doing a job. So that's just all we thought it was. So day 2, we go out there. It's still there. We don't see anybody there, but maybe they're at work and we don't really know. But we go back out there at night and it's still there. So at this point, we kind of start moseying around it and seeing what's going on. And we notice there's 2 jars of marijuana out there and they're full. So we said, nobody's leaving those sitting outside. It doesn't make any sense. In Washington, it's legal. So, it wasn't illegal to have it, but it's still strange that someone would leave that much marijuana outside by a campsite that looks like it hadn't been touched in 3 days.
Were the lids on the, did it have lids on there? Okay, I was just making sure of that one. Okay.
So the lids were on there. So then we start kind of moseying around it and we're not really sure what to do because, again, maybe this guy is still here. Maybe he's just, I've joked, maybe he's high all the time and then you realize he's left the jars outside. Who knows? So the last night we're out there, all the weird stuff's happening. We do go over there and we try to open the vehicle. We can't open the vehicle. We did take pictures of the license, the tag, and we ended up calling the police and letting them know that, hey, listen, we've been out here 4 days and we haven't seen this guy. We don't really know what's going on. So come to find out, the guy's ex-fiance ends up reaching out, or we reached out to her. I can't remember exactly how we got in contact, but that it happened. And he had told her he was going to be in town doing some work. And she hadn't heard from him in a couple weeks, which was odd because I guess they may have had kids together or something and they were in contact. So it wasn't a weird thing that they were in contact. So she hadn't heard from him. They go look and they find nothing. And it's almost a year later, they went back out, scoured the area, and they found 5 skeletons in the area. And one of the skeletons they said could be him. Again, they were never able to identify it actually being him to this day. It was really funny too. We were about to put the film out and there was a pretty large influx of people online that were, oh, they found him. Why are they calling it missing man? And we had to actually put a disclaimer at the end of the film that, yeah, they found some bones, but it's never been truly identified as finding the guy. So the guy was never actually found to this day. So it does lend into the David Paulides 411 phenomena and all that. So it's interesting because it was in a national park, and this is typically where a lot of these type of things happen. It could be anything, right? We don't know. But I can say in that area, that's where Wes had his experience, and Wes has caught quite a few orbs in that area too, which he showed us as well. So, and our experience was super weird. So it just made me think that, well, imagine just being outside by yourself, camping, or got a fire going, whatever. Something runs up on you or a group of them, I mean, you're kind of done for at that point. So we don't know what happened to the guy, still don't. I know there's a small contingent of people out there that think he's been found because that's what the police said. But if you actually read through the report, that they don't really know. They just said, oh, yeah, it's him, just to get it off the books, as they do with missing persons cases, especially if they find something a year later. So, again, they still don't know if it was him or not.
So speaking of missing persons in that area, you heard about the 2 researchers last year at Christmas in Southern Oregon. They were from Washington with Oregon and were missing. And they found them a few days later, said they died due to exposure. And then that night, after the search and rescue team and everything for the sheriff's department came back, that night somebody broke into their compound and if it wasn't nailed down, it was stolen. And that's actually in the police report. They actually created the sheriff's department came out with a GoFundMe to try and get some funds back in to restock up the search and rescue team stuff. And what's funny about that too, yeah, so no names have ever been released on that one at all. We digging into it, dead end, nothing on Facebook, no social media, no, that was my uncle, brother. But apparently one guy was in his 50s, the other guy was in his 60s. and was only supposed to be a day trip, and it was snowing, and you go to the woods, I go to the woods, we check the weather before we go to the woods. I mean, that's just a basic, it's basic common sense. And these guys apparently have been doing this for a while. And that's what stood out to me on that case. And then we have a 411 here in our area up in Bald Knob, where we've had structures and some weird happenings going on. We've been able to try and find. And this kid went out, set up. Chris is one of my researchers, investigators. It's on his ex-father-in-law's property. And he said, yeah, I followed the guy in, going on the hunt. I followed, watched him park his truck. And he said, later on that day, I left. The truck was still there. And the next morning, and I drove in, truck was still there. And I thought he got there before me. And sure enough, the kid, nothing, never found him.
Wow. That's wild.
Yeah. Utah, Arkansas is a really, really unique place when it comes to the cryptids and paranormal. We have a lot down here. A lot more people don't realize. It's almost like we're isolated. We have like one of the most highest, forested, areas in all states. So, it's forest everywhere. If it's not forest, it's farmland. And then we have small cities. Like the biggest city we have is up, Fayetteville. And that's up in the northwestern part of the state. So, love it. Absolutely love it. But, so the new film, so I know the background of the new film because I listened to the guys, the team that gone out there. So do you want, before we bring everything on in, you want to talk about the new film? What got you guys going with the opening and the two guys and what happened to them? You know what I mean? I don't want to give away the plot.
Yeah, we can give away the plot. We actually did a full breakdown on Tony's show a couple weeks ago, so I can go into details. It's not a big deal at all. Okay. So we go out there, and initially we meet with Trey and his group. Initially meet with Trey, and we do a series of interviews with him, and he has us sign these NDAs before he'll show us any of the footage, which we're actually allowed to show quite a bit of the footage for the film. That was kind of part of the release. So we were able to use some of the interesting stuff. So the entire premise on the film is built on this group, this anomalous studies group that goes out to this area and they just study the high strangeness that goes on there. Well, one particular night, a cube portal pops up on the IR, on multiple IRs. And we got this in the film. You can see it in the film. And two of the guys start walking over to this cube area. And you can see them disappear into this cube area. Their heat signatures completely disappear. Now, I want to preface this with, it's in the meadow. It's not in the wood line. And I know some people may say, well, they went behind some trees. Well, the problem with that is it's in November. There's no foliage. So they even went back out the next day and recreated it and walked all the way up, and you would see their heat signatures. And when they took us out there to the meadow, we walked over the area where the cube was at. So it wasn't even in the initial tree line. It was actually smack dab in the open meadow. So these guys disappear in there. While they're in there, they said the environment completely changed. It's like it got cold. The ground changed around them. It's almost like going to the upside down in Stranger Things. It's like it was there, but not there anymore. So they turn around to get out, and they said it was extremely hard to get out. Like the terrain got really tough for them to get out. Well, they end up getting out. As the IR from Kristen is watching this, and as they start to come out, it's panning over. You see these two smaller, almost 3-foot heat signatures watching them as they walk out of this cube. And that was the thing that really blew my mind is, what are these things watching them as they come out that just appeared? Because again, this is an open meadow. You'll see something come down out of the tree line. You'll see something walk across the meadow. She's panning, and all of a sudden she pans back, and then there's two of them watching them, and then they just dissipate. Oh, definitely something was watching them. We don't know what it was, but we can guess. Might have been watching them come out of this cube portal in the middle of the meadow. So a year later, 2 of the guys die.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask you about.
Of cancer and some derivative off of radiation. So that's super wild that they went in this cube and then they both died about a year later of cancer. So something definitely happened in that cube portal that affected them physically. Now, all of them have had strange things happen there, plus things following them back home because of it. I know Kristen had essentially a gray tried to yank her out of the bed and haul her off, levitated her off and was pulling her legs and arms and tried to abduct her over a course of several nights. And a ton of other stories too. One of them was really strange where, and I believe it was Greg Ogles that it happened to. He's walking and they see him and it's like, they just see him go here like a ball of light and just shoot across the meadow and then reappear down over here. And he has no recollection of the time lost. He doesn't even know how he got to the other end of the meadow. He just turned into what they say is a ball of light and shot across the meadow and reappeared at the other end. And he doesn't remember it. He remembers walking and he just remembers being at the other end. Doesn't have a clue what happened in between. So that was pretty wild too. And we know so many of these stories. They've got a picture, it's in the film, of this hulking figure staring at them through the tree line. And this thing's massive. We're talking about 9-10 feet just staring at him. And it's pretty wild. That was the one that blew me away when we signed the NDAs and he first showed us all the footage. I was like, oh my God, that's crazy. Like, that's the one that's got me like going nuts because that's the stuff I like. So that was pretty wild going into it. So we get there and the first morning we're going to go out and we're going to the meadow. We're going to do some Geiger readings and we're just going to get the lay of the land and just kind of see how things are. Really the first day we wanted to let them kind of do their thing and us document it. And then we would figure out throughout the week what we wanted to do. So we're in a circle and we're talking before we go out there. And I look at Jack, Tony's brother, and at first I think he's crying. I'm like, is he crying? I even said, because Tony's standing next to me, I was like, you all right, man? He's like, yeah, I'm fine. But then it started almost looking like his face was melting. So then I look around the circle and not everybody, but there were 4 people whose faces just started changing. Almost like what they came out with a year and a half ago, where they said they had this thing called demon face syndrome, where if people have a condition where they'll see people's faces change into demonic entities, don't worry about it. It's not the paranormal. We'll get you on these pills and it's something we can take care of. I honestly think that's more of a psyop to prep us for the end times and things really being let loose and us being more sensitive to the paranormal as a whole globally. And I think that's kind of what we're moving to. So, they got some good pills for us to sedate us if we're seeing this thing, because, we're just going crazy, or it's not actually supernatural. So I'm seeing this, and this is happening for a minute or two. I'm not really saying anything because maybe I need some water, because I drank some water and I don't really say a lot. And Tony knows something's up. He's like, well, you're all right, man. I was like, look, man, I don't want to say this, but it just looked like people's faces were changing in the circle. And let me preface, this was not an occult ritualistic circle we were in. This was just a meeting circle that we're talking before we go out to the meadow. I just know people hear certain things like, what are they doing?
A circle.
Yeah, right. So, right, exactly. So I tell Tony what happened. And he's like, man, that's strange. So we get down to the meadow and Tony suggests that I tell everybody on camera about what happened. He's like, it might come into play later, which it does actually throughout the week. So I tell the story. Trey starts laughing and he said, that's normal. He said, people see this happen up at the campsite all the time. He said, matter of fact, he said, one of the guys that comes up here a lot with us, he wasn't there at the time, said he was just sitting around the fire and one of the women that was there walked up and he said she just changed into an old hag, like an old witch looking. And he got freaked out and got in his car and left. He said, I'm not going to be here tonight. So he said it's not unusual for perception to be changed while you're there. So we go back out that night and we're seeing little orbs and little stuff pop up. Nothing real crazy, but it's definitely some activity. And Tony's got an IR camera out and Trey does, but they're on opposite ends of the meadow and they catch the same thing. And you'll see us in the film. It looks like something just appears in the middle of the meadow and starts slinking around. At first, they think it's like a big cat or something, but the way it starts moving, it just doesn't seem right. And nobody knows what it is. Nobody saw it come out of the tree line. And again, we went back in November too, because we wanted to go there when there was less foliage. So we would have seen something come down out of the hilltops off the ridge and into the meadow. We would have seen it. It would have got caught. This thing just appeared in the middle of the meadow. So I thought that was pretty wild that night. So next day is when we really start getting into what we call the Scott Carpenter method, or the Carpenter method. So Scott Carpenter used to have this method. When he would go out, he would put a GoPro on a gimbal and it would face behind him, and the gimbal keeps it level. And his thought pattern was, as I'm walking down these trails deep in the woods where I know these things are at, they're not going to pop up in front of me. They're going to wait till I pass and then pop up behind me to watch, which he caught some crazy stuff. He caught the albino white Bigfoot. He caught Dogman. He caught a lot of things. He caught the portal, which his son showed us, with a entity coming out of the portal, which is super wild. And I will say this, all of Carpenter's research has been bought for release at some point, but I can say that footage can be seen if you go to L.A. Marzulli's YouTube, because he did an episode with Scott Carpenter where they examine the footage. So you can go find the footage and you can see the entity, and they freeze frame it. They go through it. It is wild. It looks like some sort of elongated headed, big-eyed, alien-looking thing coming through this portal.
Your typical gray.
Very, very strange. So we do the same thing. Matter of fact, his son, super, super great dude, pretty much blessed us with his dad's rig. So I've actually used his dad's rig on different, call them missions, I guess. So we've actually built our own off of that now, but we've used his and it works like a glove, man. I mean, it's great because you're jumping and moving around and this gimbal's just keeping that camera steady the whole time. So all the footage is super steady. It's just clean, doesn't bounce, doesn't move. You're just getting great footage of whatever's behind you. So they hook me up, they send me out, and I go out a couple times. Well, during the day, I decide I want to go down at this back end of the meadow and just hit the woods and just go up the ridge and just start seeing what I can see. So I immediately get into the tree line. I get to this creek area and the gimbal goes haywire, which for that model is super unusual to do. And before that, it had cut off on me 3 or 4 times walking through the meadow, and that meadow will drain all kinds of electronic devices. So it's a strange place. So I cut it back on and I get the gimbal back on and it's working fine. But while that's happening, a big stick just comes flying out of the tree. And we're not talking like falling and hitting branches on the way down. We're like a straight shot just hits. And I said, man, that's strange. So I look up, there's nothing there that I can see. I mean, it might have been something there, but I didn't see anything. So I hit the ridge and start going up. I go down this back way. And as I go down this back way, I stop and kind of take a little stop because I was like, did I see something? So I stop and look, and down this massive ridge, and we're talking during that point of the day, there is fog down there. I mean, it is steep, real steep. I wasn't even trying to go down it. I was like, man, I'll probably fall. As I'm looking down, as it comes back up past some of the fog, there's a log. And what it looks like to me is an ape-like figure sitting on the end of this log, just looking out across the ridge. So I let out a whoop just to see if it'll move. It doesn't move. That's me thing, man. It could have just froze. So I do get low with the gimbal and I get footage of the area. And at the time I said, I'm not walking all the way down there because it's just it's crazy steep. So I walk and still, I'm not even convinced I saw it, because it's just so, you go out looking for these things all the time. And that's like the thing, right? Because you see that.
It's right there.
So I walk and I come back and I say, if it's gone when I come back, I know I saw something. So I come back, nothing there. So, oh man, now I'm starting to think maybe I did. So I come out of the meadow. They were actually setting up tents because we were going to stay in the meadow that night. So I'll walk up and you'll see this on camera. And I walk up, I'm like, man, I think I saw some furry out there. So it's funnier if Tony tells it. Tony's like, I was happy for Joel, but I was pissed off. He's like, why is it always everyone else and not me that sees stuff? So that goes down. And then that night we decide to go back to the area. Let's go look at the area and just see if we find any footprints, anything, right? Because we want to do a thorough investigation. So we start going up, and that's when we start hearing some weird stuff. And we had been hearing some weird singing in the woods too prior to that. So that was super odd. And that's not the first time we've heard crazy singing either. We've heard some pretty wild, just like the typical weird stuff, man.
Like Hollywood, the clouds part, the sun shines
yeah,
out.
it's just almost like a woman singing, just unintelligible what being sung, but it's just, something's being sung.
Yeah, I've never had that so far. Yeah,
we've had that happen a lot. Actually, it's gotten pretty normal now. So it's one of those things where Tony hates it. He gets just really unnerved when he hears that. So we're walking up. We hear some weird whistling. We hear what sounds like a whoop. So we get up to the area and we start walking through. There's nothing, man. We find the log that we think's the log, and there are some pretty sizable footprints that from what we can tell, around there. So at this point, Tony and Ward are, man, you might as well just go ahead and admit it, like you saw it. So Ward obviously wants to go through the footage when he gets back. Goes through the footage, he spots it out quick, and it looks like your classic conical Bigfoot ape head and this body just sitting on this log. So at this point, we're getting pretty jacked up. So the next morning, he brings us over to take a look at the footage. And we're like, man. So then Ward says, we could go back out there again during the daytime. And he's like, I can try to track this fern that Joel was in front of. And we can see if we get out there again, we've exhausted all options. And that's what we try to do when we're out there. And we try to express to people, we're not trying to sell any kind of, it'd be very easy for us to, you could sell pareidolia all day and say, it's this. So
I'll pause you on that. No, one, you're 100% right. When we go out, we're the same way. We're not really filming, but when I go, I have to side on the air of something else every time that we've had something happen. Like our area up just north of Heber Springs here, right off the bat, when we got in there was a growl. In the morning, to where the homeowner, the property owner, shotgun up, ready to go. And immediately, as soon as I said, we all heard that, we had a small tree knock right behind us. And he spins around, and I'm looking right back. We know where the growl came from. Went back and I played, different animal sounds, what was going on. And it sounds really similar to a bobcat. So I have to sign on the air of bobcat. And part of that is that night in the same area, it smelled like somebody stepped in cat poop. It was strong, pungent, like a cat just took a crap right there. So I'm even asking Jacob and Ray, I'm like, did y'all step in, cat crap? And like, we're taking our boots, looking for this cat crap. But later on the other side of the property, that's where the huff came from. We got two huffs that, and there's nothing in Arkansas that makes that noise at all. I was going through deer, even elk. We have elk in Northwest Arkansas, but not where this property is at. So same thing. I have to sign up the air on the side of, so the first one I have to go with bobcat. The second one, no idea.
Right. That's wild, man.
It's a lot of fun. But I'll let you go ahead. Sorry.
No, you're good. I love hearing anybody's stories. So
I got
I
a lot.
get up there and Ward finds the fern. So it's right when Tony gets up there, he's like, man, I don't see anything. I think you got it, man. We're all kind of flipping out. So then Ward finds the fern and he asked me to come stand in front of it. And I'm talking almost immediately, I see it. It's totally something playing tricks on me to the point that it was the way that the logs in the distance were moved in a certain direction. I mean, you can't even make it look like an ape head like this does. So I'm just dejected. Tony is like, he doesn't even want to talk because he feels like that our friendship's over because he was all like pushing us to come back out. And I'm beating myself up because I've grown up in the woods my whole life. And how would I have been tricked like this? You know, how did my eyes play tricks on me? And Ward's dejected. I go back and I rode back with Tony to the Airbnb because that's typically what we do after the trips. We go to Airbnb, we do some debriefing, and we just kind of go over the trip. And as I'm driving back, I told Tony, I was like, part of me wants to take it out of the film. I was like, but I do know that it's important for people to see how these things operate when you're out there and how easy it is for even experienced people in the woods. Well, as we really started like breaking it down and even talking to Trey, one of the things that came pretty evident was when I first initially saw that, it was furry. It was not the way I saw it when I walked up the last time. And coupled with the way everyone's perception was being played with the whole time we were there, I think that something was playing with my perception to make that seem even more real to me than it was because of me having people's faces change. Tony had some weird things happen. It was more on an emotional level than it was visually. Everybody was having a really weird, tough time while we were out there. And now that we've had time to really look back on it, and it was something that Ward brought up to me that I hadn't thought about. He said, what if whatever was messing with us out there this whole time, they were banking on you seeing this fur, that whatever it was created around this mirage of the way that the trees were, and you caught it on camera, and from that distance, it looks like it, and they would have banked on us just not coming out a third time to really do thorough investigation on this, and we would have sold it as we caught Bigfoot. So I do appreciate my team and how we have a lot of checks and balances. Even when we find things, we try to exhaust every option. And if we showcase something on a film and say, hey, we don't know what this is, we really don't know what it is. We've exhausted every option. And I can say at the end of the film, and I won't give this part away, there's something really weird that happened that followed us from the meadow to the Airbnb. So that's pretty wild stuff that we actually did get on camera the next day. So let people check that out. Also, as far as catching things on camera, we probably caught the most insane thing on camera when it comes to this new film called Crowley's Melonheads Children of the Beast that we got coming out, this series coming out next year. So it is the wildest thing. Next time you can't ask Justin about, hey, how crazy was that thing you saw? Because he's a big part of that film too. He did a lot of research for that film. So
He was really excited about it.
We put that in front of him and he said, because it's not just what we caught, there's sounds and everything else involved with it. So this whole experience I had alone in Michigan, in Melonhead country, was just unreal. And for us to catch something using the Scott Carpenter method, even better. And Justin was just absolutely blown out of his mind. He said, man, I ain't got nothing for you. He said, I got nothing for you.
So I love about Justin is Justin's really good to where, I had somebody send me a clip of a Ring camera at night they had picked up, and they've had some activity in the area, and we keep getting crosswires, so I haven't had a chance to go up there and dig into it. So, but he sent it to me, he goes, what is this? And I was like, sounds like an elk, like a really sick elk. And so when Justin was down here for the live show, now I said, we got done with everything, and we're sitting in my living room. It was pouring down rain, so we were looking to be outside. And I played it for him, and he goes, "Okay, hang on. Yeah, it sounds like but hold on." So he starts, he looks over, "Hey, Jay, pull this animal up." And like, they're not native in Arkansas. And he goes, "No, but you have 2 at the zoo." "Well, you have 4 at the zoo." And I was like, "What?" And he goes, "Yeah, so what if one escaped?" I was like, "Yeah, it's a good point. I mean, it's Little Rock." I said, "That's a good distance for it to go." And I showed him on the map. He goes, "There's a lot of roads for it to cross, but it doesn't mean it couldn't be." So that's one thing. And then, like in the same area I told you about where the 401 case was at, when I had a potential zapping thing, something happened to me up there. And, me and Justin talked about it, and was when y'all were doing this, and he goes, "Get a Geiger counter, get a Geiger counter." That's all I'm going to say. I can't say anymore. Get a Geiger counter. And I was like, "All right, we'll get a Geiger counter." So like, show me the spirits. They have a Geiger counter. So we were up there, and they came down, and the Geiger counter went nuts a few times in the, the front of the property, which is a lot of fun. So, but man, I mean, see, now I want to talk about spiritual stuff with you. I mean, I've had you on here for over an hour, but, and we talked a little bit about it when I saw you up there in Ohio. But in the one dream I told you about, though, that wasn't the only dream that I've had similar to that. All through my early to mid, almost late 20s was filled with dreams like that. And that'd be something I do want to talk to you about either on, another show or something, because I want to do a good deep dive into it. That's where our spiritual journey ties into. But you did inspire me, and I did reach out to a church, and I'm going to go check them out next weekend, by the way. So just wanted to share that with you on air. Just, so because my spiritual journey is still ongoing. And as me and Jacob talked on the way back, I brought the conversation up, and I was like, I'm trying to figure out, what am I missing? And maybe this is the key in my life that I am missing, is I feel like there's something missing and I don't know what it is. And this may be the one key that may be there. So I reached out to a guy who, is familiar with, the Nephilim in Genesis, the Old Testament. He talks about both. And I know that, and he's invited me a few times, and I've had that stigma of like, no. So I reached out to him when we got back, and we talked for about an hour on the phone, and he said, "Hey man, come on out." So I'll be there. So next Sunday I'll be there.
That's awesome, man. Yeah, that's kind of was my journey back to the church anyway, was just when I felt compelled. I didn't think really initially that I needed to go to church, and I had no desire to go. But I think at some point, God was prodding me to find a church. And listen, it didn't work out the first one I went to and the second one. So it wasn't the first two, but I can say I remember my buddy Mark hit me up and said, "Hey, there's this church over here." He's like, "I know the guy, and he's really cool," because there was another pastor that he knew that had went through some things, and he had helped him out. And it's 3 miles from me. So he said, "Why don't we go try there?" Because he was trying to find a new church too, because he was a music minister at a different church, and he was looking to branch out and see what else was out there. And we went there, and when the pastor started preaching, I looked over at my buddy. I was like, "Listen, man, you may be still looking, but I think I found where I need to be at. So I'm going to come back here from now on." And I did, and I ended up getting really cool with the pastor, and he and I have hung out a few times, gotten lunch and stuff, and talked, and he's very open-minded, and he is just a good people person. And his story is so good because it relates so well to me. So he grew up in the church his whole life. His dad was a pastor, and he became a pastor very early on. He was married, and the story that went down was he cheated on his wife with somebody who went to church there. She cheated on him basically with somebody who went to church there. It was a whole mess. It was a scandal. And he obviously got kicked out of the church and just ran away from God for about 7 years. Drank and chased women, did all kinds of things. And during that period of time, he ended up coming back to God and realized that God still wanted him to preach. So he wasn't sure exactly how he was going to do that. And he even laughs. He's like, the first year that I was preaching, he's like, "Man, I didn't even know if God existed." He said, "I just knew I was supposed to do it." He's like, "I knew what I needed to do." He said, "But I was still working things out." And he is super honest with his congregation, and he got remarried. And this is a crazy story here. So both of his children, who are older now, obviously, go to church there, and they help out with the music and stuff. But initially, his new wife told him that, music needs some help here. We need somebody that can run it. And so she said, listen, I've been praying about it. You need to reach out to your ex-wife and tell her to do the music here. So he said he fought God for a month on that one. He's like, man, no. He's like, this is a terrible idea. But after a month, he actually reached out to her, and she said, you serious? He's like, yeah. He's like, wife told me that I needed to reach out to you. And so it's crazy. Like, his ex-wife runs the music ministry there. He and his wife run the church with, obviously help, and the kids are there. And what's crazy is she's remarried to the guitarist at the church. So his ex-wife is. So it's an interesting story, but it's an interesting story of redemption and God's grace. And I knew just hearing that story, that's where I needed to be at, because I went through a very similar thing growing up in the church and breaking away from God for a long time and having no desire for anything to go down that path anymore, and then to come back and then rebuild your life. And to listen to his story of how he rebuilt his life, it was like a constant evolution and growth. Some people, like Tony, were in a bad spot and then instantly changed. Like, it was just a revelation. Some people like me, you have that revelation, but then it's like a slow growth, a slow build into what you need to do too. And that's God's timing, right? That's how God speaks to people different ways. And I know for me, Tony was a big catalyst to get me back into church and God. And I remember him challenging me in Philly. This is back when he lived in Philly. And I remember him telling me, God's got something special for you. You just need to give in. And I remember really thinking long and hard about that as I was at home, and, I slowly started building that. And church wasn't on the top of the list of things I wanted to do as I was moving that direction, but it ended up being something that I found along the way. And I know it's tough for people because they view church, some people, as a institutionalized place where, you've got pastors that siphon money off of people and all that. That does exist, but I can say that it exists a lot less than you think it does. And I think that we get this idea of church because of some of the bad apples out there. And for the most part, there are some really great places that have great communities. And I think that's what church is really about. You find somebody who speaks to you that God's speaking through. Obviously, there are definitely some churches you probably shouldn't go to. You coming out of Mormonism will probably tell it better than me, but for sure, there's some places you probably shouldn't be at. But if you go to a place that God's leading you to, then you need to be there. And what it creates is a community with other people who are also trying to grow and learn. And there's something to be said for that. It goes back to how I end my podcast with go outside, touch grass, and get your tail out the hole. That's part of getting out of the hole. That's part of touching grass, is connecting to other people around you and not being stuck in your head all day and looking at conspiracies or Bigfoot or whatever else, right? There's more to life. And I think that that's the tough part for people who get caught down these rabbit holes. They start looking at all religion's evil. It's all some sort of manufactured thing by the elites to control us. And there's a part of that, but I can always point to early Christianity and what it was always supposed to be from when Christ left and what he created here. It was never an institution. And when you really look at it from that format, and that format has existed since then, just because Constantine made it the Roman religion and Roman Catholicism started out of it. Then you had the Gnostics fighting them, and you had all of these different things going on. Doesn't mean that real Christianity didn't exist throughout that too. You had the Protestant Reformation. You had a pushback against a lot of that. You had some good things spawn out of that, and you had some bad things spawn out of it too. It's kind of how the devil works, man. He tries to infiltrate whatever he can, wherever he can. But I can say at the root core that real Christianity's always existed, and it's always existed in a format where you can meet people who are also trying to grow just like you. And that part of it as well, we're all human, man. We all screw up. We all make mistakes, and we can't judge people's mistakes on God, and that is indicative of who God is. And I think that's tough for us as humans because we see quote unquote Christians acting a fool or acting in a way that's unchristlike or not being who we would consider to be godlike, and then we're like, I don't want to be a part of that because of those people. You know, most people I talk to that hate Christianity, it's generally about 2 or 3 people in their life that they've met that are Christians that they can point to that have turned them off to it. And I always laugh too, because I'm like, it's 3 people out of how many billion in the world? Like, really, when you think about it. But I can't knock their experience because that's their personal experience with that. And I'm hoping with what I do, what Tony does, and what we all do, that we can help bring people to a different reality when it comes to a relationship with God. You know, it's different. That relationship's different than it is going to a church inside 4 walls and singing a few songs and going home. It's actually building a relationship with him and understanding that he's always there, and it's somebody we could talk to all the time. It's not something that we have to even get on your knees and pray. You don't have to do that. You just talk to him while you're in the car. I do it all the time. So
Same.
I think that that's something that we got to get in the mind frame of and understand that we're going to screw up. We're human, and we can't look to other humans to be the representation of him either. And I think that's very tough for people because for some people, that's all they get. That's all they see.
Well, you're right. And, you know, like my journey started 4 years ago. You know, the show and everything was actually spawned during 2020. The VA bumped up my disability, which was great. I needed it. The company I was working for, I left. I was only seeing my kids 2 nights a month. I was like, no, I need, you know what I mean? My kids want to see me more. Got brought on. I could take a pay cut from another job, which was nice. So I did that. Now, obviously, 2020 was there. Got put on furlough. Had nothing to do. So I'd hang out with a little watering hole. And one night, we just started talking about paranormal and cryptids, and we kept going and going. And the bartender was like, man, you need to start my podcast. Kind of blew it off and like, okay, whatever. A couple of years later, though, my life took a big flip, and it was like a weird awakening, or where I was spending my time and my money at wasn't the best place for me to be at. And as soon as I started taking myself out of that, I started learning who my real friends were, and my mind and my heart became clear, if that makes any sense. And then being pushed to start the show 2 years ago, my buddy Matty, he was pushing me really hard. He was like, you got a voice for it. You got a great personality. This would be awesome. And I was like, yeah, I know we keep talking about it, but you know, I don't know. And he came over one night and we sit around the fire, and he goes, well, you thought about it? I said, yeah, I thought about it. I said, if we do it, I have a name. And he was like, oh, I said, yeah, Drunkencryptids. I think that's hilarious. I said, campfire setting, we sit around and we're visiting, you know what I mean? We're going to talk about share encounters and go from there. And he goes, all right. And of course, 4 months later, dies. And at that point, I was like, okay, maybe I'm not doing the right thing. Maybe something's wrong. And out of nowhere is when Tommy just showed up. And I hadn't seen Tommy since 2019. And he just sent me a message going, hey, can I come over for Memorial Day and just kind of hang out with you? I was like, yeah, come on over. And that was the night he approached me about taking over the producer. And since then, I mean, I'll be honest with you, my life has done a great positive change to where, I mean, I was featured in Search for Sasquatch, my show, first year, one of the best documentary podcasts in Arkansas. Yeah. I mean, I got a chance to meet you. I got a chance to meet like Justin and Jay, you know, other people, researchers reaching out to me, want my opinion on a certain topic, you know, and it feels really good to have a dream to when I was a kid watching this stuff on TV. And now I'm a part of this community and still felt like I was missing something. And like I told Jacob, after talking to you on Saturday, I think the church was what I'm missing. And that's why when I got back, I reached out to my buddy. His name is Matt as well. And we talked, and he said, yeah, he goes, it's about time is what he said. And I said, well, you never gave up. And he goes, well, I always see every Sunday when I post my live show, you do watch a little bit of us. And I do. That's what, you know, so again, part of that is, you know, credit to you on that journey. And I mean, and I've been a backseat driver watching your journey, which has been amazing. to be honest with you, and it's something you should be proud of, and you're leaving a great legacy for your kids and your future grandkids as well.
Yeah, try not to think about grandkids, but yeah, it's getting that time, man. My kids are older now. Yeah, I get people saying all the time that you got grown kids. I say, yeah, I got a 23 and a almost 21-year-old. So, 21-year-old, he's in the military. I talked to you about that. So,
well, I am a grandpa, by the way.
Oh wow, okay.
Yeah. My
daughter,
out in California, and her husband. Yeah, I got a 2-year-old grandson, Hunter.
I'm not quite there yet, but I'm sure it'll happen at some point, man. But
well, they waited. She's almost 30. Yeah, she is 30. Yeah, she is. Yeah, she killed me. Yeah, she is 30. So I mean, they waited. I mean, she was smart. She took her time. Met the right guy. Super nice guy. And they're both really big D&D nerds. They're really big Star Wars nerds. I mean, they do really well together.
That's good. Yeah, my kids are like that too. They're big nerds. And my son's super athletic. And he has a dream of being a professional wrestler. And he actually did professional wrestle before he went into the military. So he was actually doing really well. He trained at Hawks Academy, and it shut down literally after he finished his whole course. And Hawks Academy's had some big wrestlers come through there that are in the WWE right now. But he was wrestling on the indies for a little bit before he decided to go to the military, because one of his things was, I just need something tangible that when I get out of the military, if I want to chase wrestling, I can, but I've got this whole thing. And I told him, I said, listen, man, you may get in the military and love it. You may love what you're doing. Shoot, you may get out and have a whole nother job career you may want to do. And I said, or you can chase wrestling. So you got that option too. And he's really good too. So I told him, remember him asking me when I went to watch him, and I'm a huge wrestling fanatic. I've been watching wrestling since I was a kid. So I love wrestling and I know all the ins and outs of it. And he asked me, he was like, do you think I'm good, Dad? Do you think I could do it? I was like, yeah. I was like, I think you've got the athletic ability and you got the acting skills that you would do in high school. And he was an amateur wrestler in high school. So when he went in there, man, he knew grappling and all that. He just had to learn the showmanship part of it. So it was just teaching him how to do it in a way that's choreographed and is, you're not hurting the other person per se, even though it's a lot harder on the body than people want to make it out to be, though. So it's definitely a sport, but he was really good at it. And, I'm proud of him. He's doing great right now, man, in the military. I mean, he's top of his class. He called me the other night because he's on California time. He called me. It was late. He's like, let me call you, Dad. I got to tell you something. So he had to do some sort of oral presentation for his MIT. And he said one of the top generals was walking by and came and sat down for the last half of his oral presentation. And he said the general got up and nodded at the MIT. And then he said the MIT came up to him and said, you're on the radar in a good way, just so you know.
That's something you're proud of. He comes by naturally. Look at his dad. I mean, I'll be honest with you. You do a great job. But all right, I am going to bring it for a landing real quick. Tell everybody about the latest movie.
Yeah. So if you go to merkelfilms.com, you can get to all of our films. So you see the posters in the back. We've got Shape of Shadows. We've got Expedition Dogman, which was our first film. That's
my favorite so far, by the way.
Which was a super crazy.
The tree shaking.
Man, I can't even.
It's great.
To this day, man, I can't even explain what happened. Something that big shaking at the bottom like that just still blows my mind. Sasquatch and the Missing Man. You can go check out the new film, The Meadow Project, and we've got some, again, over 2 hours of bonus footage that goes along with that you can get for purchase or rent. And we've got more films and documentary style series coming out over the next few years. We've actually shot a few, and one of them I can talk about that we shot that's going to be edited at some point next year. We went out to Bray Road and we hunted the beast of Bray Road, and we had some pretty wild stuff happen out there too. We actually got to stay on the guy's property where this dogman creature's been harassing his property for the longest, and we got to stay on the property for a week. And Tony and I were walking Bray Road at 3 a.m. in the dark. So pretty wild stuff. But yeah, go check out the Meadow Project and all the other films. And again, if you just keep up with me on any of the socials, really you can get to everything I do. Just go to Linktree/Joel Thomas Media, and you can get to the podcast. You can get to the music. I do a lot of music too. You can get to the films. You can get to everything at that hub right there. But if you're just looking to get the podcast, you can go to YouTube, Rumble, Spotify, Apple, pretty much anywhere that you watch or listen to podcasts.
And you're very talented musically. Like, I mean, it's not my genre, but I listen to it. I mean, it's because it's a different intake. And my perception of hip hop has changed through you and your show, by the way. So, but definitely you guys go check out Free the Rabbits. Check out Joe. I mean, I follow him on Instagram. I'm subscribed to him on Spotify. He is my Monday, my Monday morning as I start my day. That's the first podcast I start up every Monday. So I start my day off at work with Joel. You know, hey, everybody. I just want you guys to
love it.
I do. Like I said, a big fan of everything you've done. Looking forward to more what you have coming out. Extremely excited. Ready for some new music, by the way. I do like Imposter. I'm not going to lie. I do like the song Imposter. So
Appreciate it.
You're great. Just want to say that to you. So thank you so very much for taking the time out to come on my show. I know at first you're like going Drunkencryptids. And I love everybody has that same reaction every time they hear the name. But yeah, thank you, Joel. I appreciate it. It means the world to me for coming.
No, anytime, man.
Thank you very much.
I can do anything that I want. I can do anything that I want now. I can do anything that I want. Hey, hey, if it is to be, you know that it's up to me. I'm headed to the front. I can be anything that I want. I can be anything that I want now. I can be anything that I want. Hey, hey, if it is to be, you know that's up to me. I'm headed to the front. 'Cause I'm the king of the